Hey guys, it's Max. Welcome to take 3 of this video on the video editing performance of the MacBook 2016 compared to the Razer Blade with the GTX 1060 and the Dell XPS 9550. Now, these two Windows machines are, in my thought, the best options if you're coming from a MacBook and trying to switch over to Windows. Now, they're not maybe the best value price-wise, but I took all things into consideration. Not only the specs, but having a good screen, keyboard, build quality, and having the right processor, same processor as the MacBook Pro. They all have the same processor here. Good graphics card, so an all-around machine. That's because when the 2016 MacBook Pro was announced, there were a lot of people that were really disappointed, and not only people who don't like Apple products and typically just complain about Apple, but actual Apple users that have been waiting for years to upgrade to this machine. I saw a lot of comments of people saying, hey, I've been waiting for this, but now I'm probably going to go with the Windows machine. A ton of those guys were saying that. So my thoughts were, well, what are the best Windows machines and how do they compare? Now, naturally, I do video editing, and so that's going to be a big aspect. That's this video. But apart from that, there's a lot of other reasons why people consider MacBooks. Daily usability, things like the keyboard, the trackpad, the speakers, the display, the build quality, the size and weight of the machine. So a lot of things go into it. So that's my other video. You guys can go check it out. It's already on my channel, and it's basically like the usability. I cover a lot of different topics, charging and flexibility and the ports and lack of ports and so much different things like that. So if you're interested in changing to a Windows machine or you just want to see that video, definitely go check it out because there are some really good insights, some really good surprises that I was not expecting, and there's some Windows versus Mac OS stuff. And I've been using Windows, I built my first computer 16 years ago, so I've been using Windows for a while. I'm not really like a Windows hater, but I do mention benefits and negatives. So this video is focusing just on video editing. I'm not going to go deep into the specs of these machines or why I chose them and what I'm kind of not happy with, but that's in the other video. In this video, I will mention that they all have the same CPU, the latest Skylake processor, and graphics card wise, the MacBook Pro has a Radeon 464GB. It's an AMD graphics card. The other two have NVIDIA graphics cards, which is what most people say you need for a Premiere Pro. And one has the 1060, which is a very powerful graphics card. The 10 series for laptops is a huge step up from the 9 series. And the Dell XPS has the 962GB. And so it has a graphics card more on the level of the MacBook Pro, just raw power-wise. Now, the XPS is the only machine with 32 gigs of RAM. It's the only one that you can add 32 gigs of RAM to. And I wanted to see if that shows any difference compared to the other two machines that are maxed out at 16. Keep in mind, both Mac OS and Windows 10 are really good at RAM management, and I did not have any RAM issues. So let's go in and take a look at a few benchmarks, and then we can go and look at Premiere Pro video editing. I'm not going to be covering Final Cut because if you're considering switching from a Mac to Windows, you obviously aren't tied into Final Cut like I am. So we're going to be taking a look at Premiere Pro, both under Mac OS and also under Boot Camp using Windows 10, just to see if there's any differences that are not hardware related, but operating system related. So let's take a look. So I have all my info here. I'm going to be going off my phone, and you guys can follow along with the data on your screen. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is Geekbench 4. So here we have all the machines, and you see that the MacBook Pro under Mac OS gets the best score in single core, and it pretty much gets, it's pretty close in multi-core. And then under Windows, all the machines are fairly close. Just, I guess it's the Mac operating system being a little bit more optimized. The GPU test, on the other hand, the Razer Blade kills it. It's basically almost double what the other machines are, or double. So the Razer is 110,000. The MacBook Pro under Mac OS is 57,000 and 54,000 under Windows, and the XPS is 47,000. Now, this is using OpenCL and doing a lot of different tests. So we can see there are some variances between Mac and Windows operating systems for the MacBook Pro. Now going into Cinebench, 665 the Mac under Mac OS, And under Windows 10, 640, a little bit lower, and then 641, 673. So the CPU scores, they're fairly similar, and they're all the same exact processor. Under GPU, now it gets interesting here. Using OS 10, I'm just going to call it OS 10 or else there's too much Max in the name. We have 71.88 FPS and 103 under Windows. So there's definitely some differences. So the 103 compares to 78.46 for the XPS, and the Razer Blade, no matter which version I tried, it would not run. I tried multiple versions. For some reason, it would run, but the test would be like 1 FPS. So we're going to move on to Heaven, which is not a rendering test like Cinebench, but it's more like a gaming type of a test. So here, the score we have under MacBook Pro, under OS 10, we have 461 as the score compared to 588, the same machine under Windows. And then also with the FPS, 18.3 compared to 23.3 on the Windows side. So better performance, MacBook Pro under Windows. And then going down to the Windows machines, you guys see there's two different numbers here. The first number we're seeing is the Razer Blade 1682, so double what the MacBook Pro does under Windows, slightly double. But then we also have 1218. Now, both of the Windows machines, if you unplug it from the wall and you're editing on battery power somewhere on the go, they perform worse, where the MacBook Pro, it doesn't care if you're plugged in, if you're unplugged. It has enough power from the battery pack at one time that it doesn't slow down. Now, yes, I did check the settings and made sure any power saving stuff is turned off. In the XPS, there's actually 5 different sections where you have to disable stuff. The Razer Blade does less, either 3 or 4, but I made sure everything was correct. The MacBook Pro, it figures it out itself what graphics card needs to use and if you need to save power or not. But both the Windows machines, because they're using graphics card that take more wattage, when you unplug them, the battery just can't feed enough power to it. And so the XPS, we have 663 higher than the MacBook under Windows, and it goes down to 574, a little bit lower than the MacBook Pro under Windows. So you are losing power when you are not plugged into the wall, which is definitely unfortunate. There's also some Heaven GPU tests as far as the temperatures, and you see the temperatures are close, but the MacBook is not as hot, does not run as warm. Continuing our temperature tests, I did a transcoding test which transcodes H.265 footage, and this is basically to see if the machine's thermal throttle, it maxes out the CPU. And so all the machines are running at 3.1 gigahertz, and after 30 seconds, you guys see the MacBook Pro is the same as the Blade as far as temps, 89 degrees, and the XPS is a little bit cooler. It's sitting right at 85. After 5 minutes, the XPS actually cools down to 83 degrees, while the other two machines are at 85. And after 15 minutes, that we have actually basically 85 on all of the machines. So they all run cool enough. 85 degrees isn't cool, but for a laptop, it's not getting anywhere near that point of about 95 degrees where it's gonna thermal throttle on you and you're losing performance. So not so bad. The Razer Blade is the loudest, and that machine, even under idle, it has fan noise. The other two machines are quiet, or they're basically silent under idle, which is great. If you're used to Mac products, they love quiet machines, and I'm used to that now, and it's really weird having a machine, when you're not doing anything, you're just hearing like a humming or a buzzing noise because the fans are constantly running. One other thing I tested is running a 4K video while you're transcoding. So the CPU is maxed out, and let's say you still want to use your laptop, and you either want to watch a 4K video or you're doing something else like that. But a 4K video under OS 10, El Capitan on the Mac, 4K is perfectly smooth on YouTube. You can transcode and you're watching a 4K video without a problem. Now under Windows, the Mac and the other three machines, 4K is running at like 3 FPS. Change it to 1080, maybe 15-ish FPS, and change it to 720, you're still getting some dropped frames, and even at 480, you'll get some dropped frames. It's the smoothest at 480p, but what this tells to me is just the Mac operating system is optimized. It knows that even though you're transcoding these files, you may still want to do something on your machine, so why not give the user 3% of CPU power, or 5% of CPU power, whatever it is, and allow them to still enjoy their machine while doing this task slightly slower. instead of on the Windows side where basically it doesn't let you do that at all. You're struggling. You know, if you're transcoding, that's all you could do. So just some interesting observations there. So let's go over to Premiere Pro. We're going to start with stabilizing a 4K 20-second clip. Now this is really interesting. This doesn't make sense, but these are the results. The MacBook Pro under Mac OS or Windows 10 is about 6 minutes and 24 seconds, or 6:15, so very similar. For some reason, the Windows machines were 7:13 and 7:20 when they're plugged in. I don't know if it's some difference in the graphics cards, but the CPUs are the same. So it is slower, and if you unplug those Windows machines, now we're looking at about 8 minutes and 20 seconds, or 8:15. So we're getting a performance loss. Now moving over to a 5-minute 1080p clip with 2 LUTs and film grain applied. The MacBook Pro under Mac OS is 6 minutes 47 seconds. Under Windows, 5 minutes 21 seconds. The Razer Blade is 3 minutes and 22 seconds with battery power, or 6 minutes and 8 seconds unplugged. Yes, this is really weird, but this is what the tests tell. And then the XPS is 5:15, so slightly faster than the MacBook under Windows, and then 5:33, slightly slower than the MacBook if you unplug it. So not a huge variance with the XPS. The numbers are similar, but the Blade, when it's not getting enough juice, the graphics card, at least in this test, seems like it's even slower than the 960. Now moving on to the same test, but now we're looking at a 5-minute 4K file with 2 LUTs and film grain. We have 23 minutes and 14 seconds, the MacBook Pro, or 22 minutes and 14 seconds under Windows, so a slight improvement. 17 minutes and 30 seconds for the Razer Blade, and then 18:23 for the XPS. So there are some good improvements over the MacBook. Now, unplugging those two machines, we get 23 minutes and 2 seconds for the Blade, 22:50 for the XPS. So similar numbers, or slightly slower than the MacBook Pro when they're on battery power. Now this is the hardest test. It's 4 4K clips, each at 50% scale, placed side by side. So you have 4 4K clips in a 4K project. With 2 LUTs and film grain applied to each clip, and 2 of those are reversed. So this is a huge load on the graphics card. It doesn't use as much CPU because the graphics card is the bottleneck in this test. So we have 4 minutes and 15 seconds for the MacBook Pro, 4:58 MacBook Pro under Windows, 1 minute and 51 seconds for the Razer Blade, so it's killing this test. The XPS actually is not that much worse, 2 minutes and 11 seconds. And then if you have it unplugged, 2 minutes and 18 seconds for the Razer Blade, not much slower, still about twice as fast, or a little bit more than twice as fast than the MacBook, and then 3:02. So for this test, the XPS does lose out more when you have it unplugged. So as you guys can see there, the numbers, in general, the Windows machines do beat out the MacBook Pro by quite a bit in most of those tests, but when you unplug them, other than the most extreme test, you're actually about similar performance. And that's because the MacBook Pro has a 35-watt graphics card and then the 45-watt CPU, so it can handle, it can give it enough juice in no matter what situation you're in. So a couple more tests here. We have a 4K, that same 5-minute 4K file with those effects, but now we're looking at timeline smoothness. So you're not only looking at rendering speed or exporting speeds, you also want to edit smoothly. So the MacBook Pro under El Capitan, you can play back that file with those effects without dropping frames at a quarter resolution, which means you're playing it back at 1080p, which is good for the machine. Now, if you run the MacBook Pro under Windows, you can play back at half resolution without dropping frames, and along with 2 Windows machines, they're also half resolution without dropping frames. If you go to full, you're going to be dropping frames on those machines. So there are, as far as smoothness, I guess there are some optimizations on the Windows side that you get. Now, this last test is just basically running it as a desktop setup. If you're somebody who likes to connect your laptop to a monitor when you get to the office, this is something that matters to me, is having a quiet setup. If you're writing scripts or doing emails, and the MacBook Pro, it runs at 48 degrees Celsius under El Capitan, or 50 under Windows with the fan at idle, so not spinning up at all. And it's just because you're driving 2 displays, or like a 4K display, which is what I'm testing this with. The Razer Blade is at 60 degrees Celsius, so it's hotter, and the fan's at 40%. So even idle, you can hear the fan, but this is 40%. So it is kicking up the fan quite a bit. So expect to have a constant just humming in the background. And then the XPS is at 55 at 30%. So quieter, but it's still kicking up the fan. And it's just one thing I noticed when I was using the machines and plugging them into to the monitor. All right, so what are my conclusions from all this testing and the last month spending with these two Windows machines? Well, as you guys see from the video editing side, the Windows machines do a better job with Premiere Pro. They do have NVIDIA graphics cards. The Blade graphics card is way more powerful. The graphics card in the XPS is similar power. And if you're using Premiere Pro and you care about the best performance, you should get a Windows machine. I've been saying that for probably the last few years. You have a lot more options as far as your specs. You're using NVIDIA graphics cards with more power than what Mac puts into their MacBook Pros, what Apple does. But what I also learned is that if you're unplugging them from the wall, you're not going to be maximizing your performance. You're basically getting a MacBook Pro in most tests. In the very most difficult tests, the Razer Blade still did better, but that is an extreme test that almost nobody is doing. And if you're doing anything that heavy, where it's taking, and that file is actually, I think, 15 seconds long or 20 seconds long, and the Razer Blade is taking like over 2 minutes to do it, you're going to be using a desktop because that is really extreme editing. So it was just very interesting to see these kind of results, and this is just video editing, so I definitely encourage you guys to go check out my other video that covers a lot of other aspects, especially if you're coming from a MacBook. There's so much other things that matter when you're living with a machine for 1, 2, 3 years, or some of the guys that are buying MacBooks 4 years, 5 years. There's a lot of other things that are going to make or break your usage with the machines. So there are some very interesting things about these two Windows machines, some things that I was not expecting. Now, the XPS had that 32 gigabytes of RAM, and I thought that could have made a difference. And a lot of people complained about the MacBook Pro not being able to have 32, and about the Razer Blade maxing out at 16, but I didn't really see any differences. None of the machines maxed out their RAM, and both Windows 10 and El Capitan or Sierra, they use their RAM really well. They have really good RAM management, and it's not as much of an issue as RAM was a few years ago. So I would not, kind of dismiss a machine just based off of the RAM. Now, the graphics cards do matter, and we saw that Razer Blade really killed it when it was plugged in power, but unplugged, it was basically like the XPS or the Radeon inside the MacBook Pro. So the XPS actually, the update was just announced with Kaby Lake, which is not a very big difference over the CPUs that are in these machines, but it was also announced with the 1050. Initially, I was quite disappointed that they were putting a 1050 in there instead of a 1060. But if you're editing on the go, that actually might be the better option for that machine, because it's going to be able to handle the graphics card under battery power a lot better than the 1060. So there's always trade-offs. But overall, I like the XPS quite a bit better than the Razer Blade, and you guys can watch the full video to find out why. So I am going to put some links in the video description for all of these three machines that I tested if you guys want to go check those out. I'll also put some links for a few other machines, Windows machines, that are less expensive, but based on the results that I found, would still be good options for Premiere Pro. Now, those machines, even though they're less expensive, they're not going to be as nice. Build quality, they're going to be really plasticky. They're going to be thicker. The screens are probably going to be worse, and that's why I didn't include a lot of these other Windows machines that are less expensive, why I chose these two laptops. But I'll put it in if you guys don't have as much money and you still want to get something to video edit. So let me know what you guys thought about this video and the other video if you guys check that out. If you guys are new, you guys want to see more videos like this one, along with a lot of other filmmaking type stuff and video editing, definitely hit that subscribe button. You guys should enable notifications so YouTube does not filter out videos that you want to see. So if you've been subscribed for a while, definitely make sure you hit that notification and let me know if you do. I will give you a high five in the video. And we all want to give a big thank you to our Patreons that help support us and make more videos, help us make more videos like this one. So for just $2 a month, you guys can start supporting us, and there's different tiers that offer different perks, such as exclusive videos that nobody else gets to see, 24-hour early releases with ads disabled. We do giveaways. We actually have a giveaway tomorrow that's going to be announced. And we have just a bunch of other cool stuff. So hit that Patreon link, check it out, and see if that's something you guys want to do. We definitely appreciate it. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.